Hey, Senator Crusaders, welcome back. Biden's first 100 days. I want to talk about immigration right now. Christopher Hajec is here. He's the Director of Litigation at the Immigration Reform Law Institute. Christopher, how are you, sir?
Very well, thank you.
Good to talk to you. Let's talk about, well, what do you think? We'll start with you. The most egregious or noteworthy executive order that the president signed regarding immigration so far?
Well, one of the most egregious is the moratorium on removing people, deporting people who have final orders of removal pending, against them. There's no basis in law for that at all. In fact, it's contrary to the law, and he gave no explanation for it whatsoever. And that's important in administrative law because you cannot take actions that are arbitrary and capricious. You have to explain why. An agency has to explain why it's doing things. And Chief Justice Roberts made that very clear in some cases involving some of Trump's actions.
Can you take us through maybe a typical case, typical example of what type of person and what they did or what happened that they got to the point where they were ordered to leave and now they're not anymore? What would that look like?
Well, it would be somebody, for example, who was a legal immigrant and committed an aggravated felony involving a sentence of 1 year or more, or a crime of moral turpitude. And they are supposed to be removed from the country. And suddenly they're not, and for no reason. So it could be a public safety threat.
So it's an illegal immigrant who committed a crime, you said that has a year in prison or more? Yes,
is supposed to be removed from the country.
And now, and is that all the people that would be affected by that, or is that a segment of the people who are affected by this?
That's an example. It's anybody, any illegal alien who has gone through the process, been found here unlawfully, and ordered removed by a judge.
Wow. So where are they now? Would they still be in prison now, or are they free, you think?
Some of them are in detention, some of them aren't.
I can understand from a progressive's perspective about maybe not continuing with more of these deportations, but the people who are already ordered to be deported, that seems to be the problem, right?
Right, and there are clear cases of people who should be deported under the law. There's nothing, they've been through the whole process. There are no defenses or anything they have left. Wow. And if we're going to have a country at all in borders, we need to have a system of deporting people. It just is absolutely necessary.
Wow. Why a moratorium? And what do you think is coming after the, whatever it is, 60 days?
Well, that's just it. It's there is no explanation for why there's a moratorium. And that's what makes it arbitrary and capricious. In fact, the court in Texas just found that and put a temporary restraining order on this policy. This policy is not in effect because of that.
I read that headline. What did that judge say, and what authority does that judge have over this? Like, why did this judge even hear this case?
Well, because the judge has the authority to interpret federal law, and the judge found provisionally, as an initial matter, that it looks like this violates federal law, and that it's also arbitrary and capricious because there's no reason given for it. And the TRO is in place for a short period of time, and while the parties brief a preliminary injunction, and we will be. Our group, the Immigration Reform Law Institute, will be filing a brief in that. And if that's granted, then it'll be appealed to the Fifth Circuit.
What do you think Biden, the government, the federal government, Biden's team is going to make? What argument are they going to make? Because they can't, in the court of law, make up, we like illegal immigrants here, right? They can't make a political argument. So what legal argument are they going to make?
Well, they can't make it. They can't come up with any reason that wasn't already given by the agency in the record. The agency actions are judged based on the agency record. Here, there is none at all. So the lawyers are really powerless to come up with any kind of justification post hoc that's going to survive arbitrary and capricious review.
Wow. Give it. What is? Can you give me the legal definition of arbitrary and capricious? What does that mean?
Well, to avoid being arbitrary and capricious, you have to engage in reasoned decision making. You have to explain what you're doing and give reasons for it and consider all relevant factors. It's not a very high standard, but arbitrary and capricious a synonym. It's really saying the same thing as crazy or irrational. and a lot of what they want Biden to do and what he's been doing so far is crazy and irrational. And that's actually a legal problem for them.
Let's go to DACA. What is DACA and what has Biden done with this?
Well, he's trying to fortify DACA. The problem is that's not going to affect what Judge Hainan does in Texas. He's soon to decide on whether DACA is lawful or not. And every indication is that he will find that it is not and strike DACA down. And then it'll go to the Fifth Circuit and probably be upheld. Judge Hainan's decision will be upheld there, and it would be upheld or not even reviewed by the Supreme Court. So DACA is left legs.
That seems hopeful then. That's the good news, right? What is DACA? Remind us.
That's blanket prosecutorial discretion, not deporting people who came to this country as children with their parents illegally, and also giving them work authorizations.
So if they get
executive action, and the problem with it is that the president doesn't have that kind of power. As Obama said, this was an Obama program. He said many times before he did it that he didn't have the power to do that. And but then he decided he did, and something very similar he did called DAPA was struck down in the Fifth Circuit, and by Judge Hainan, and the same reasoning applies here. It's an important constitutional question, whether about executive power.
So Biden's executive order he brought it back. Is that what happened? We're going to bring it back, and
he's strengthening it or fortifying it by adding new people and new procedures. But it's not going to matter if the DACA itself is struck down. These new things will not survive either.
Yeah. What did Trump do with DACA over the last 4 years?
Well, he rescinded it, but then that was blocked in the Supreme Court eventually because he didn't, according to Chief Justice Roberts, he didn't explain himself enough. His action in rescinding it was arbitrary and capricious. Now, that was a very divided judgment by the court, and many justices disagreed. But Chief Justice Roberts voted with the liberals, and so Trump's rescission was blocked. But that doesn't affect this case in Texas.
Weird. So what's the constitutionality of DACA that you think it will be overturned if the Supreme Court didn't already overturn it?
Well, an easy argument against DACA is that it is what they call in administrative law a substantive rule. It's a rule telling agents what they have to do. They have to give deferred action to people who meet these criteria, but substantive rules have to go through a public notice and comment process where the public can weigh in and comment on the proposed rule. DACA never went through that process, so it's void. And it would be very easy for Judge Hainan just to find that.
That's not a super high bar, though, right? Because you're saying it still doesn't need to be voted on by anybody. It just needs a public comment process.
Yes, but it's also unlawful for other reasons. It's a failure to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. You can't just have these blanket executive amnesties where you're just refusing to enforce the law because you don't like it.
Wow. Okay, give me another one. We've got a few minutes here. Give me another one. Let's do the travel ban. What do they call it? Is this the same as the Muslim ban, which wasn't that, obviously? What is Biden's authority with this?
His authority is broader here because these are presidential proclamations that the president issues under a law that gives him discretion to restrict the entry of aliens into the country in the national interest. And that's what Trump did in the travel ban. He said it's not in the national interest for aliens from these countries to come here because it's a national security threat. And So the president has very broad discretion there, and Biden may have a different view of the national interest than Trump.
Okay,
He
but he
doesn't
has
have
the authority
to explain
to.
himself as much. It's very hard to argue that he has to explain himself. He's not acting through an agency. When some of these things are implemented through agencies, there might be opportunities for challenge. And my group is going to challenge Biden's actions in the coming months as much as we can. And we would do more if we had more resources. We don't have the hundreds of attorneys or thousands of attorneys and hundreds of groups on the other side that were fighting Trump and trying to stop everything he did in the immigration area.
I wanted to ask you why. Why are you passionate about this? Why are you taking the time to spend your expertise on this issue?
Well, it's a very important issue for the national security and the national interest and the interests of working Americans. It's when you bring in large numbers of immigrants or illegal aliens and they take Americans' jobs, wages are reduced for everybody. This has been a major drive of a major reason why working people's wages in this country have not gone up in real terms since the 1970s, except a little bit under Trump. They started to go up because, you know, if you expand the labor supply, you lower wages. And that's why employers and big business and so forth want this. They don't even mind having illegal aliens because it all drives down wages and they can pay people less. But business and employers don't have to consider the national interest. The president should. And it's wrong to pauperize large segments of the American people.
Last question for you. What is this executive order dealing with the census that Biden signed?
He reversed Trump's exclusion of illegal aliens from the census count for apportionment. The argument there was that that we made was that if only the American people or members of our national political community should be counted in for apportionment, because when you're counted for apportionment, you're given representation in our national government. And people who aren't part of our national political community shouldn't be represented in our national government. But anyway, and the Supreme Court, you know, threw out the suit against Trump's plan, but Biden's just reversing Trump's plan. And, you know, elections have consequences. And of course, the reason he's doing that is it doesn't affect the well-being of illegal aliens or anybody else one way or the other. It just means that Democratic states, being the ones with far more illegal aliens in them, get more representatives and they get more electoral votes. So it's a partisan issue for the Democrats.
Christopher, appreciate your time. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thanks.
Have a great day. More coming up. Biden's first 100 days.